What up, Clay?
Life is good, Kareem. Man, the direction that this country is going in is really scaring me. Bro, where did it all go wrong?
Well, I would say it all began with the Reagan presidency. We went from a manufacturing society to a pure consumption-based society. All of a sudden, rich became the goal. Remember the TV sitcoms from back in the 60s and 70s? What did they all have in common? They all featured hard-working, blue-collar, unionized characters who represented that manufacturing society. Jackie Gleason was a bus driver. Mel's Diner was a diner. Lucy was a housewife and they lived in moderate means. Leave It to Beaver, Brady Bunch, etc., etc. all were working-class families who didn't strive to be rich. And of course, shows made up with people of color featured a junk man, a project family. Hell, George Jefferson owned 7 cleaners yet lived in a 2-bedroom apartment. Well, that changed with Reagan. Next thing you know, we have Dallas featuring oil tycoons, Dynasty which featured rich white women, and The Minority shows were nothing more than The Cosby Show, who were themselves a lawyer and a doctor. But remember what happened in the 1980s. Our neighborhoods were flooded with guns and drugs by the CIA, as they openly admitted during Iran-Contra, not to mention championing the food stamp era. Simply put, we as a society have been conditioned to strive to be rich rather than just being productive members of society living modestly and in a community form as war propagated in the 60s and 70s. We began to look down and point fingers at the have-nots, ignoring the CIA's role in their poverty-stricken lives, and began to separate ourselves based on class. Meanwhile, the government was hard at work destroying the union labor this nation was built on, and enacting legislation that would further increase the gap between rich and poor. Remember the savings and loan scandals from the 1980s? That was the first step in stealing money from the generation that preceded the baby boomers. And what was the fear tactic used in the 80s to keep the general public unaware of what was happening? The Cold War, which was a pile of crap. Then came the 1990s, when derivatives first reared their ugly heads. You may not believe me, but as far back as 1994, it was reported that there were over 800 trillion, yes trillion, in derivatives floating around the market. However, the problem with collecting on that money was the Glass-Steagall Act, which of course former Herb's CEO Phil Gramm did away with the Commodities Futures and Modernization Act. Now, the corporate structure had the barrier removed that prevented them from turning this nation into a literal oligarchy. So of course they needed another Pearl Harbor type event to once again distract the public, so legislation designed to strip away the rights and civil liberties can be passed. 9/11s happened and the nation fell for it. Then came Patriot Act 1 and the complete liquidation of the US Treasury, coupled with award actors being paid for off of the books at the rate of about $30 million per day for nearly an entire decade now, longer than Vietnam. Of course it was all blamed on the housing market, which is a pile of monkey mess. We are now being conditioned to accept security from those who place us in danger. It is literally a psychological experiment that is taking place. We are being conditioned to fear everyone, besides our own government, and it works because Americans would rather remain ignorant and pay some blinking attention to what is happening around them. We sit around thinking our damn Facebook group holds the answers to the ills of our communities. We sit around arguing about nonsense that keeps us oblivious to the world around us. And that is exactly how they want it. This is why I no longer participate in the partisan political system, brother. It is diseased on both wings, and neither side care about the general welfare of the public. But you know who I blame for all of this? Ourselves.
Wow. Dude, where'd that come from? I have to say, you are onto something.
Well, actually I got that from a post on this website K.I.K, Knowledge is King, Mark Well's site. You should check it out, they keep it real over there. Just Google search K.I.K, knowledge is king, and it will be at the very top of the page.
Yeah, K.I.K, sounds interesting. I am going to check it out right now, Kareem. Peace, bro.
Peace. Life is a beautiful struggle.
Yes it is. Yes it is.